And this is episode number 18 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, yours truly, Vito Chirco, alongside, as usual now, my sidekick and my partner in crime, the Doc, from Doc and Jock, John Macaroon. John, what's going on today?
Big news, Vito. I mean, you took the 1 week off. It was very light, but you come back, and there's lots to get to with the Tigers, man. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the recent moves. A former catcher that was here for 7 years. His first 7 years with the Tigers, no longer with us. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. The great addition, the new starting pitcher that we brought on, Mike Ilitch sighting. We got a lot to get to in terms of the world of baseball. But first, I want to definitely get into your work with Top Cat Sales and the challenge that I posted to you.
Okay, go on.
And you did not deliver. You disappointed me a little bit.
Well, I chickened out a little bit, but then I told you the truth, and that was what I told you too.
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard, if this is the first time listening to the podcast, Vito is an up-and-coming journalist. He's doing a lot of different things. I got a lot of respect for Vito because he's been trained as a journalist. Your degree was in broadcast journalism?
Communication studies, which focus on journalism and news writing.
Okay, so you're the moral compass, I would say, of the podcast because as well as Adam, he got a journalism degree from Oakland University. Whereas myself, I'm the wild gun, just shoot out my opinions, don't care. I'm kind of fascinated regarding the world of journalism because there is a lot of infighting in terms of journalists who are kind of now, in terms of their credibility, what they're doing. And now you got Twitter. What's the role of that? Source information, those who might be, talking to athletes and getting out certain messages, propaganda, all that stuff fascinates me. So I'm really interested in talking about that stuff. But this year, you got to be in the U of M press box for all the games that were at home. So you got to see, you got to hobnob with the big wigs here in town, and you got to go to the press conferences. So the first 5 or 6, there was what, 5 or 6?
6 home games.
You did go up and get interviews. You podcasted them on SoundCloud.
Yep,
very good. So I said, okay, Ohio State is the crescendo. This is the game you got to kind of, boom, this is the one. This is the game. And I said, Vito, just ask Jim Harbaugh a question. You don't have to go out there and, be worried about what's going to happen either way, da-da-da. So the moment came, and you had said to me, okay, well, Jim Harbaugh wasn't giving that many great answers. He was short. He was curt. Yeah, because he got, U of M.
He got annihilated. I know you like that, Doc.
U of M got curb stomped.
Yep.
Woo-woo. So I was excited. But you didn't ask any questions. So my point to you is, why do you care what answers Jim Harbaugh are giving? You know that going in, he's pretty much likely to give sort of short, not super great answers. The point is, though, you got to ask the question. That's my opinion.
Yeah, at least try it out, you're saying, right?
Yes.
To see what he will give to you for an answer. Maybe it will be something more in-depth, more elaborate than what he was delivering to every single other reporter there in the press conference.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't worth it because I'm not writing a game story, so for me to get a quote that's worthless, that's not going to give me anything of value or magnitude. Because it would have been a short answer, a one-sentence answer, as I was telling you.
Yeah.
He was blurting out that, and then that was it. He got right to the point, and that was it. He shut everybody out. He didn't want to talk because he was annihilated by Ohio State. So he was embarrassed, deeply disappointed, and I could tell by that.
Okay, my thinking along the line of question was, because the U of M got kind of handled, my thinking was, were there any distractions throughout the week? Now, obviously, with Lloyd Carr's grandson, there's a distraction. And also, the coordinator, Durkin, is now being speculated and rumored to be maybe taking the Maryland job. So my first thought of my first question I might have asked was, do you feel like that the distraction with Coach Durkin might have played a part in the preparation this week? Now, he's never going to admit that.
Well, the thing is, too, nobody asks that. Now, a journalist can be...
That's a question
can do that, right? Hardcore journalism does entail that, asking the tough questions at times. But for me, once again, I'm a social media guy right now. I'm not writing a game story covering the team every single day or week for the free press or the news. And that's where I find the discrepancy or the distinguishing mark that separates me from the other journalists and reporters there inside the press conference.
Now, going forward, you have now an open invitation. We do have a blog at DetroitSportsPodcast.com. So no longer, you have the chance. I get you. The first time, Jim Harbaugh has a presence. And I think as I got older, I gave a shit less what people thought about anything. So
I think it's about that too, not caring about what people think. See, I think too much about that because I want to impress these people still because I'm still looking to get jobs one day at the news or free press.
Yes, exactly. So that's why I didn't hammer you too much. Gave you a little bit of ribbing and said, okay, Vito, we're going to have a little chat about it. But you do now have a forum. Anytime you want, If you want to write something up, you write, for several other websites.
Yep.
If you want to contribute to the Detroit Sports Podcast blog, because right now basically it's just kind of a recap of all the podcasts because we archive it completely at YouTube. You have the right to write whatever you want, and I'm not going to edit it because I don't know how to read or write effectively. I know use my big voice, with all the editing I have to do. So you have a right. So now, going forward, anytime you're in a press conference, you can do some notes for Detroit Sports Podcast. So next season, if you get that blessing and opportunity, you have to ask the questions.
I'll tell you this much, too, to all our listeners right now. I did talk to Jim Harbaugh, though. Remember that I have talked to him one-on-one, so I haven't chickened out realistically. I have in the press box or conference element to a degree, but I wasn't looking for that realistically. I wasn't looking for one quote. I wanted the one-on-ones, and those were what you got after the press conference ended with the players. But the players this weekend weren't available, by the way, for that either, and I was disappointed by that because I would have asked Chris Wormley, Amaro Darbo, Jehu Chesson, those guys questions after the press conference wrapped up. I didn't have that chance to do that this weekend, so I was disappointed about that myself.
So the players, they had one conference. I saw
one conference. It was short and sweet to the point. Once again, for all the players, so everybody was able to get a question in if they really wanted to. But I like the one-on-one stuff, so I can fire off more than one question. Because in that element with the press conference, where all the media comes in, sits down, you get one question realistically, and that's it.
Okay, so then before we get to talk about the Tigers, I know
we have that to talk about. I think too,
for
on
sure.
Tigers talk.
I know you like getting grilled about your job and how
well, you can tell I'm being a little defensive, but no.
Yeah, how wannabe
not too much
wants to just go up there and start asking ridiculous questions.
Because you would, wouldn't you? You would just go right up there.
I could care less. I would.
But you can't be afraid too. That's right.
I could care less.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody thinks of me. It doesn't make a difference to me. I'm there to ask the question that I think I want to know about. And obviously, Durkin's name is being bantered about,
but see, that
could be a distraction.
But see, that's not about the game totally. Now I get your angle. Now you are saying that it's a distraction for the game, so you're getting that in to make it a part of the game. Yeah. But realistically, he is not going to talk about that whatsoever.
Of course, you get the.
So it's not a dumb question, totally.
No,
I'll give you that much. But it's a question that won't lead to anything of value.
So you sat through 6 press conferences with Harbaugh.
5 actually, because I went to the Oregon State one when they played Oregon State, and I talked to their coach.
Okay, so based on what you saw this first go around in terms of the questions. Were they pretty much straightforward? Did you get a sense of the vibe of the questions that the media journalists are kind of shooting at Harbaugh? It didn't seem like he had any real press conference quotes that got out there that were anything serious. Nothing made the news. He kind of was straightforward. He wasn't too curt or too rude. He was kind of just how he was.
He's Jim Harbaugh, and I think he's eccentric, and he shows that off in each and every single press conference. And I think the media knows that and understands that fully too, now being around him for as often as they have been for the full season. So you know what you're going to get out of him. And on Saturday, you got nothing out of him of value. Trust me. No doubt about it. So it wasn't worth it really to ask a question that wasn't totally relevant to the game itself. So if I didn't have a game-related question, it wasn't worth it at all. And it's not going to be worth it for anybody going forward to ask him a non-game-related question. But really with any coach, remember how they're thinking in the back of their head. They want to get out of there as soon as possible. Yep. They don't want to deal with the media at all times. And especially after a tough loss like Harbaugh experienced on Saturday. Because I didn't see that coming. I don't think even you as a Sparty fan saw that coming. That big of an annihilation. Mm-hmm. I saw a loss. But at home, at the Big House, come on now. U of M should have played better. And their defense for sure should have played better.
See, I think, Vito, you're very kind and you worry about Jim Harbaugh's time. I worry about my time and the fact is
you want your time. I want my time to shine too. But like I said, I have talked to Harbaugh, and I think of it this way too. I'll get my time to shine one day, and maybe even one-on-one with Harbaugh for a bigger interview for more value then.
Okay.
Because really, you do get more value.
So first off, my first lesson in journalism was that question that I was thinking and texting you to ask him. Was that a valid question?
Valid, but not probably what you want to ask in a press conference setting. Now, just talking to him, once again, one-on-one, outside of the game element, maybe the day after or a week after the game, if Durkin is still in the news about getting a job from Maryland or somewhere else, then you ask it to him. Or if you're that beat writer that really knows him, has that comfortable working relationship with them, then you kind of have the ability to ask any question that you think of that's relevant to the program at least. So I think in that element, in that setting, then you can ask a question such as what you were thinking of and told me to ask. But I would have asked something else anyways, I think. So I like the recommendation, but I would have asked probably about how tough of a loss it was and then comparing it to MSU. And I thought about asking one of the players that, and I should have asked one of the players that. That's one thing that I do regret. But I was thinking, too, because we did not know they wouldn't be available after the game to talk to us one-on-one. We weren't notified of that. So when they went up there for their little press conference, we thought we would get them after that too. And then I could have asked them about which loss was tougher, the MSU one or the Ohio State one. Because losing a tough game as they did against MSU in that way, that's tough to lose by itself because of how it happened at the very end of the game. But Ohio State getting annihilated by that kind of a score in the second half especially, is that a tougher loss? That's what I would have asked the players and to figure out what really was a tougher loss for them.
Okay, I appreciate that.
But that's the U of M talk for now, and what I think about Harbaugh and what I experienced this year in the press
And I'm proud of you. I'm
conferences.
proud of you. You did good. Great pictures. You really brought us a little bit closer to what you do and what it's like in the press box. You got to put your name out there, and people are seeing that, hey, this guy is doing stuff, and I really appreciate that for you. And anything I could do to help, I love it. And I just like the fact that I don't have to be answered to anybody about what I say or do, and I would care less about decorum or anything like that. But I get a little insight regarding the world of journalism and what's been going on and how things are going. So very interesting, and a lot of people are talking about it too because Jim Caldwell put the spotlight on the Detroit media, the Dungeon of Doom, Detroit
The
media.
negative media, yeah. Well, you know what? As we talked about before too, it's negative because guess what? Your team has stunk this year.
It's objective.
Now they've been picking it up, but it's the opinion of people covering the team. And when you see the team losing as much as they were at one point, and still they're not the greatest team, well, you're going to be more negative than positive.
And I really believe
it comes down to that.
The Detroit media is objective, but in terms of the team websites, I'm not really sure about that.
No,
We'll
they're
talk about
PR
that.
people, yeah.
Okay.
But anyways, Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. Doc, Vito, Chirco here. Good talk about Harbaugh, but now transitioning into the Tigers and the big signing, Jordan Zimmermann.
Ooh,
J-Zim.
yes.
Jay-Z, as I like to call him, coming into town. We have Frankie now, Frankie Rod, and then J-Zim and Jordan Zimmermann. A number 2 starting pitcher who has 2 N's, remember. 2, not 1, at the end of his last name. So remember that going into this season. And remember that he'll bring you good productive value as a number 2, but do not expect him to produce as a bona fide ace caliber arm. He's not going to be that number 1. JV is that going into this season anyways. And it's a good thing he's not going into this year like he was last year, being hurt, affected by all that, and not really coming off of a good season. Now, coming off of the second half, I like him as the number 1 a lot, and I think Zimmermann perfectly slots into the number 2 hole. So, with that being said, I like the signing outside of the big money they had to give to get him. But when comparing it to Cueto and what he will get, what Price and Greinke will get, who are both better. But Cueto is not better entirely than Zimmermann. Better pure stuff. But the thing is, Zimmermann, better career numbers. FIP in fielding, independent pitching, 40-plus points. Better than Cueto's. Now, the only concern now for me with Zimmermann is not even his Tommy John surgery from 2009 and maybe an injury rehashing or flaring up once again. It's more the fact that he allowed all those home runs last year. I believe it was 24. He has to reduce that by at least 5 to get under 20, and I think he has a good shot of doing that at Comerica Park.
I agree 100%. When they announced the signing, I'm like, okay, good. Vito and I were on track. We're kind of looking at second-tier guys. We knew that realistically they weren't going to spend $200 million for a starting pitcher because Mike Ilitch in his appearance said that, hey, we're willing to maybe go that route, but there is, you can see kind of, they're trying to go up to that luxury tax line at around, I think, $189 million.
It's increased. I think it's 189 now. It was less last year.
Yeah, and so I don't think they want to go over it. So they're in that window of 175 to 189, like we talked about. So, the Tigers are trying to sell that, hey, this was our guy. This is the pitcher that we targeted. But in the end, what really the story is, Jordan Zimmermann was the best fit with the number that they could work with. Because if you want to build a World Series team, Jordan Zimmermann's not the best guy. He's not the best guy. You got Johnny Cueto, you got Greinke, you got David Price.
Those 2 guys are definitely better than Zimmermann.
They're better than Zimmermann. So if you're talking about World Series or bust, you would think then maybe you would break the bank for those guys. But in the end, you realize, okay, we're going to sacrifice in terms of what we're doing in the outfield because when you look at what they're going to roll out there in the outfield right now, it's concerning. And you do realize you had a need at pitcher. You got the guy that you think at Comerica Park could have potential. But now we have to wait and see because, yeah, he did give up a lot of home runs. His fastball velocity did dip a little bit. And a lot of people will say, well, it's not really a big deal. But a guy who's now 4 to 5 seasons removed from Tommy John surgery, any continued wear and tear on that arm could dip that velocity further, and that will allow for more contact hits, for more less strikeouts, and a less effective pitcher. So that's a reason to be concerned. But Jordan Zimmermann's got good stuff. What we all need to see, Vito, And I think if they, with the new pitching coach that they brought in from Philadelphia, I do believe that these guys now in their 30s can learn to be better pitchers. Now, I think what everyone wants here in Detroit is guys that just strike everybody out. We all like that stat. But what I want to see is, can Jordan Zimmermann become a all-around pitcher? Can he feature better stuff? Can he get guys out, being more creative, mixing up his speeds, being more of a pitcher?
Well, remember, I think he was that last year because he was forced to adjust to that kind of pitching because of the fact that his velocity went down, as you noted. So for me, it's about the longevity factor, too, with him. He has that endurance. So if he doesn't get hurt, which I don't really believe that he will, I think the Tommy John thing, once again, is in his rear view mirror. I think it's behind him now. I think he's worked his way, getting past that, and now he's a guy that can go 195 innings at least per season going forward. And remember, he's not 30 yet. He turns 30 in May. So he's still younger. For a 5-year deal, it's worth it for that, for the contract.
And now philosophically, though, when you look back at it, the talk around the water cooler is, for a starting pitcher, do you want to give guys 5- and 6-year deals who are turning 29? See, that's a concern because...
I say 5 years is the cutoff. I say more realistically, hey, see if they can go 3 or 4 years. Probably 4, because that's still kind of long-term, where 3 is kind of short, where you want to make sure you max out with your value for these pitchers by getting them for at least, I would say, 4 years. So forget the 3, go with the 4 number. But if they want more than that, I say 5 is the cutoff for a guy that's turning 30 or is already 30.
See, for Tigers fans who are also peeking in, you would say, did you see what Scherzer did last year? He had a couple no-hitters. He got a couple close calls for perfect games. He did some things that were kind of unheard of in baseball. And you let that guy go because he asked for more money. Well, in the end, he was worth it.
But he struggled in the second half, and can he sustain it going forward? It's about the long-term contract with him. The Tigers weren't willing to commit that money, but also the 7 years.
Yeah, exactly. And what Mike Ilitch revealed at the press conference for Zimmermann was Scherzer gave the Ilitch family a price, and they were relatively close to saying okay. And then when they went to actually do the deal, Scherzer upped the price, and I think that rubbed Ilitch the wrong way. And he said, okay, that's just way too much. And he kind of thought, okay, you know what, you weren't maybe negotiating in good faith, or there's some issues with that. He took it maybe personally. But I'm just saying, you know what? If you have Scherzer for 1 or 2 years, if you had him for last year, maybe you make that run last year. Maybe you are adders. Remember, you could have featured a rotation with Scherzer, Price,
Verlander too, but he was out, and Sanchez was out too. So I still think they would have struggled last year, just not as much as they did last year. If they would have had Scherzer in the rotation, as really he would have been the race last year for the longevity of the season, because JV was out and didn't turn it on until late in the season. Really, the second half is when he turned it on. But they had to wait a long time for that to happen, where Scherzer was consistently good and productive. But once again, he's an ace right now, Scherzer, but he's a strikeout pitcher. Can he sustain that productivity as a strikeout pitcher going forward without his arm falling off? Yeah. Where I think Zimmermann, he doesn't throw as hard, is not as much of a strikeout pitcher, but still Ks batters, and that's key. He does still do that, remember. And I think with that being said, he throws a little bit lighter now, readjusts his game, his arsenal as a pitcher. I think with that, he becomes a better all-around pitcher who can pitch later into his 30s, can pitch into his 35 age year, and be productive still, into his 36-year-old, 37-year-old year, and still be a really good and productive pitcher, at least as a number 3 guy, which means he'll be a middle-of-the-rotation guy, I think, at the end of this contract, too, with the Tigers.
See, I know when we were talking about Zimmermann, we like the number of Anibal Sanchez. We like that 5 years, $80 million. But he's getting, But
really... Zimmermann's better than Anibal Sanchez at this point, especially. Yeah. Now, besides for last year, you could have said they were very comparable to one another. But after last year happened for Sanchez, it's definitely now Zimmermann, heads and shoulders above, I would say, Sanchez, and what he can bring at this point. Because I think Sanchez, too, remember, is, for my liking at least, way too injury-prone. We know he's injury-prone, but I think he's far too injury-prone to be a number 2. At least a solid one. So
right now we're sitting looking at JV, Zimmermann, Anibal, and Daniel Norris as the 4, and the 5 is still going to be the question mark. Maybe it's going to be one of those guys like Green, or maybe Fulmer, maybe Boyd. Someone's going to have to step up and earn that job. I don't think they're going to target a starter that could potentially cost that much more money. They're going to look to be way more cost effective, and just another guy that could be part of the audition for number 5. That'll be fun to watch. Who's going to audition for number 5? Who's going to be slotted in that bullpen, who maybe could have been a starter last year? So that's still going to be a work in progress, but just on the surface, before we see anything, that first 4, It's pretty good.
It's good enough if Sanchez once again is healthy. And Norris, I think, could pitch as good as a number 3. I think he'll be the number 3 by the end of the year.
Oh, really?
Over Sanchez. I don't trust an Anibal Sanchez rebounding. He had a 4.99 ERA last year.
Ton of home runs given up.
Home runs allowed. 29 home runs allowed. Ooh. He's not good enough going forward. I wouldn't mind if they traded him. If they found a way to get rid of him, even for anything. I think his value is low right now, so maybe you want to wait to see if he improves to get his value back up. But I'm thinking, and I'll make a bold prediction right now, he won't be the number 3 by the end of 2016.
Okay.
He'll be more like a number 4, number 5 if he, once again, stays healthy. I think it's really a big-time medical red flag with Anibal Sanchez at this point. And that's not a good thing, Doc. Not a good thing for the Tigers. But they have the likes of Michael Fulmer within the farm system. Shane Green, maybe he rebounds. Now he's going to be healthier, right? Apparently he was hurt last year down the stretch. And for a lot of the season, I think. So Green, rebounding, being more healthy. Him, Fulmer fighting for that number 5 spot. Matt Boyd fighting for that number 5 spot. Then if they add a veteran arm on the cheap, such as Doug Fister to come in and be the number 5. Because I think they might still do that, and then Fulmer comes up mid-season. Or they just go with what they have from within the farm system, and Fulmer still is a guy that's called up mid-season and becomes that number 5 by the All-Star break.
Very interesting stuff.
Or after the All-Star break, maybe by a little bit.
So before we get to our guest, Michael Natelli, who's been on the podcast
He's
before,
back.
He knows Jordan Zimmermann, watched him last year.
Yep.
He can give us more insight. You kind of agree that this guy can be an addition to help this club get back to the playoffs and maybe make a push.
Well, yeah, because look at what they had to work with, right? I mean, until getting Jordan Zimmermann, they had Anibal Sanchez as their number 2. Who would have liked that? I would not have liked that. I've already told you what I think of Sanchez. I really badgered him so far this podcast. But it's true. He was not a trustworthy number 2, a reliable option to put in as your number 2 behind JV. No way was he good enough to be that come opening day. So for me, yeah, you bought a number 2. You didn't have a number 2. So it's a big-time addition for the Tigers getting Jordan Zimmermann. And even maybe at that price, because I think it was Fangraphs that did a article recently coming out with the stat that Zimmermann actually is worth more than he's being paid right now, annually, from the Tigers, over 5 years. And it'll be around $22 million a year, with the total number varying per season, actually. So, I'm telling you right now, they upgraded. Maybe didn't get the top option. They didn't. But they got the best of the second class of starting pitchers on the open market this offseason.
I'm very interested to see what Michael Natelli has to say and to really kind of give us a little bit more insight, because I'm still kind of on the fence. I'm happy they got an upgrade at pitcher, but I'm still a little bit nervous that some things could falter, because we are expecting that he does improve, and the trend last year was he's going down, and you've committed $22 million per season for the next 5 for a guy that we're expecting to get 16 to 18 wins and not give up that many home runs, and to adjust to the American League and Comerica Park. So it's going to be interesting to see.
And I guess you have a point there. I think what he did last year might be indicative of the fact that he is on the downside of his career, or trending downward like you were saying, Doc. But I think this, mark my word, he'll be better than he was last year with the Nationals. Even though, remember, too, he's pitching against DHs now in the American League. So a tougher league to face batters in, because there is no pitcher at the bottom of the lineup to face. So there is that factor, too. But I think Zimmermann improves, becomes a better starting pitcher, allows less home runs, and allows an ERA, or records an ERA of 3.5 or below in 2016 for the Tigers.
All right, let's take a quick break, and then when we come back, Michael Natelli will give us some insight regarding Jordan Zimmermann. And after our interview, we're going to talk about the career that was for the former catcher, the guy that gave us some great memories, started his career with the Tigers. His dad decided that, hey, you ain't good enough for me no more. Off to the White Sox. We'll talk about Alex Avila's departure after our interview with Michael Natelli. Stay with us. Doc here for FanaticU.com. Vito, if you're going to start your Christmas shopping, you definitely have to check out FanaticU.com, Detroit Sports official outfitter and the official outfitter of the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. They've been a great sponsor. They've been very supportive, allowing our listeners and followers to earn gift cards, to win contests, and they've done a great thing. If you shop online the month of December and use the promo code DSP at FanaticU.com, anybody at all, you can make any purchase for any amount. You'll be entered into a drawing. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a $100 gift card at the beginning of next month. So you can buy anything at all, whatever the price. Use the promo code DSP at checkout. You will save 15% off your entire order. Even if it's a sale item, even if it's an item that's on clearance that's reduced in price, you will save an additional 15% if you use that promo code DSP. Use that promo code DSP and enter into a contest to win a $100 gift card. FanaticU.com, Detroit Sports official outfitter. And now back to Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And now joining me on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company is Michael Natelli of Call to the Pen, FanSided's Major League Baseball blog. Michael, what's going on today?
Hey, Vito, how's it going?
Very good. And you know what? I'm surprised you said that you're very good when you factor in that Jordan Zimmermann is now a Tiger. He left your Nationals, Michael, and you're still feeling doing very good. Now tell me, how big of a loss is that for the Nationals?
It's a big loss. He gave the team 201 innings last year. He led the league in starts. He made all 33 starts. He had arguably his worst year as a full-time starter, having a 3.66 ERA, but, still very reliable and was top 7 in National League Cy Young voting in both 2013 and 2014. He went to the All-Star game both those years. It's going to be a big loss, especially for as uncertain as that rotation was last year. It was surprising they were so uncertain, but he was sort of a pretty consistent force, relatively speaking, and it's going to be a big loss for the Nats, but definitely a big game for the Tigers.
So what does he bring then to the Tigers now? Is he that number 2 to slot behind JV? Because I think he is, Michael. What do you think?
Well, that's what they're saying, and, it definitely makes sense. What makes Jordan Zimmermann so great is not that he is particularly strong at any one thing. It's that he does everything so well. He keeps the ball in the ballpark. He doesn't walk a whole lot of guys. He does get his fair share of strikeouts. He's never going to post, 10 or 11, but he always is good for 7, 8, or 9 in the game. He's good for roughly 200 innings a year. 2014 he had 199.2, but he's been good for 195 plus every single year since 2012. And, he doesn't allow runs. He's posted a 3.25 ERA or better every single year other than this past season. And, people are saying that maybe the Tigers overspent when he's coming over his last season. But, they're getting a darn good pitcher in Jordan Zimmermann, especially as he's entering his age 30 season.
Should the Tigers and their fans be worried about the velocity drop, though?
There's always going to be concerns with drop in velocity, but, what he does well, though, is not strike guys out. So for that reason, I'm not too worried about it because he's a very elusive pitcher. He has very good off-speed stuff, and if his fastball is going to be a mile or two slower, that's going to be maybe somewhat of a concern. But, he's a good enough and a smart enough pitcher where that's not going to be nearly as much of a drawback with him as some other pitchers.
So, Michael, the Tigers now have a 1 through 4 of Justin Verlander, Jordan Zimmermann, Anibal Sanchez, and Daniel Norris acquired at the deadline from the Jays for David Price, as you know. All that being said, do the Tigers have to add another arm now and via free agency?
It's really just how perfect they want to be because, like you said, Verlander, Zimmermann, Sanchez, and Norris is a very good 4. If you're looking to bolster it, really what I would do if I was them is just look to add some depth, and that is because you saw Boyd, Green, Lodstein, all kind of unreliable last year. They had flashes of, quality stuff, but adding a veteran, no one's flashy, but even someone like, a Sean Locum, a Kyle Loesch on a 1-year deal, bringing Tim Lincecum, or, maybe even a Matt Latos or Mike Pelfrey, Jeremy Guthrie, someone of that type. No one overly impressive, but someone just to add a veteran competitor in spring training for that 5th starter job so hopefully you get the best out of somebody to have a more reliable 5. Because guys like Boyd and Green, Lodstein, they were getting the Tigers out of the game by the 2nd or 3rd inning at times last year. And for as good as that 1, 2, 3, and 4 is, you want to know that every single day you have at least a chance at winning. So that would be the only move I would look to make for them in the starting rotation, unless they really want to go, all out and add someone else. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, you're right, Michael. The Tigers' 5th starters last year, Matt Boyd, you had Buck Farmer, you had Shane Green. Those guys stink. They really did, Michael. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And for me, that means you have to turn your attention now to, if not somebody on the free agent market, maybe somebody within the organization, such as young starting pitcher Michael Fulmer, this top pitching prospect now for the Tigers. But the question that I have for you is, will he be ready by opening day to be that 5th starter? Because I think he's more that midseason call-up kind of pitcher.
Yeah, that's what he strikes me as. But, spring training is an interesting thing, and sometimes guys are just so impressive that they earn a spot. But, that's why I'm saying, maybe go for a 1-year deal on a veteran, so that this way he can be that guy. And, if he's good, but they still like Fulmer, they can always trade him, which is never a bad thing to have more. You can never have enough starting pitching. So I think Fulmer will be much more of a mid-season call-up. But, things happen in spring training, so we'll see.
Really quick, do your Nats have to add an arm now because of the loss of Jordan Zimmermann?
They don't have to because it sounds like they were planning for this from day one. it was sort of the writing was on the wall there with Zimmermann and Desmond both being probably gone. Same with Denard Span. So they don't have to. They still have Joe Ross. They still have Tanner Roark, who they're going to move back into the rotation. They have Gio Gonzalez, Steven Strasburg, and Max Scherzer. Now, if they end up trading Strasburg, which there's been talk of, then they need to go add an arm. But right now, they have a very good, solid starting five that they could definitely start the season with that started tomorrow.
All right, Michael, I'll let you go on that note. Have a good one, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
Same to you. Thanks, Vito.
Thank you. And back on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, the doc from Doc and Jock, John Macron, is still here. He was listening intently, as he always is, right, to all my guests. You better be at least, Doc. And I think you were that time to Michael Natelli from FanSided's Call to the Pen, Major League Baseball blog for FanSided. Some good points, I think, about Zimmermann, the signing, and what he brings to the Tigers, Doc.
No, exactly. He is kind of lockstep in what we were talking about. He does feature some good stuff, and really, in the end, now we're just going to have to wait and see what he's going to produce. Is he going to be that guy that's going to actually go out there and execute what he's capable of doing? Because we're going to be asking Zimmermann to now not only pitch at Comerica Park, but go out there in the American League and shut down some potent offenses. I'm going to be fascinated to see. I'm looking forward to see. Now, relatively quickly, we play the Yankees early in the season. We have, we go up against some of the big hitters early on, and I want to see how he does against the likes of the Rangers, how he does against Anaheim, how he does against Houston. So it's going to be fascinating to see. And what's going to happen with those pesky Blue Jays? Are they going to retool because they were mashing? So in the end, the situation is, as always, good pitching usually beats out good hitting. But, the Tigers they've featured good pitching, but they haven't risen to the occasion at the primetime level when it came down to it. So we'll see if he can be that force, that guy that can help the Tigers get over that hump, because Illich said it. We all want it. You want it. I want it. We want to see the Tigers be a strong, competitive team and get that World Series, man. Since 1984, it's been a long-ass time.
I haven't even been around for one, Doc. Come on, for me, a long-ass time. It's not even a long-ass time. It's more than that. It's been my entire lifetime. It's been forever for me, since the day I was born, June 9th, 1993. But anyways,
wow,
that makes you feel a little bit old, right, Doc? Because you're a bit older than me. What are you at right now? What are you staring at, by the way?
I'm staring at, I was born in 79, so I'm staring at 36.
Oh, my gosh. You're closer to 40 than you are to 30.
Very much
Does that scare you?
No, not at all.
You're still young and vibrant.
Like everyone says, like a fine wine, the Doc ages beautifully. It's great.
Well, that's for debate, but for another day on Tigers Talk. Anyways, so they gain this guy in Jordan Zimmermann, but they lose Tigers a legend, the legendary Alex Avila. I mean, so many people are going to miss him. We were sobbing beforehand before we did this podcast today. We have the tissue right now ready to go for you and I, just in case. Sad day in Detroit Tigers land. But they had to move on. He was going to move on, I think, anyways, Doc, too.
Let's do the obligatory moment of silence for Alex Avila.
Let's do it for him, all right?
Let's pour out our little waters, our Hennessy, for the departed Alex Avila. All right, it's great. We got James McCann.
Right?
We got James McCann. It's great. See you later, alligator.
More than fine with him being gone, long gone. But to the rival Chicago White Sox, Doc, of all teams, he had to be a traitor. But no, we don't care that much. And you know what? Honestly, I would have taken him back as a backup. And honestly, I still feel that he did some good for the Tigers organization. He had some value as a backup, as really the guy that was the starter going into last year too, but way too injury prone, banged up, and it caught up to him. He can't hit anymore. He is a legitimate Major League Baseball backup at this point. And really, that's all he is, Doc. But he'll be a good veteran presence for the White Sox and their young pitching staff, which is led by Chris Sale, as you and I know. So I like it. I like it for the White Sox, Doc.
You think?
And at $2.5 million, it's not expensive for them either.
Not expensive at all. Isn't it a little bit weird, though? I mean, I guess Alex Avila can look at it that the Tigers were like, you know what, we're going to be amicable. And he kind of knew going into it once. I'm sure he talked to his dad about kind of his future. And he said that, you know what, it's nothing personal. I understand. I started my career with Detroit. And he really kind of dug into those people that said that Alex Avila was only on the team because his dad was there. He's like, do you really think that Dave Dombrowski and Jim Leyland would put their career on the line?
Yeah, want to get fired over that? Come on, man.
To put me on the team? So I agree with that. I don't think it was nepotism. But what you could argue, though, is that his numbers didn't really justify him being a starter. And maybe you could have said McCann could have been brought up 1 year earlier and his development could have been further, because Alex Avila would get those clutch home runs every now and then.
He was clutch the year before last year. He was clutch, man. I mean, I think he was the clutchest player on the Tigers roster at one point. If it wasn't 2014, it was 2013, Doc. And I think it was 2014. And even before that, he always came up with some clutch hits here and there. So for me, he brought some value, was productive at times, but wasn't consistently productive enough to be the starter full-time going forward, especially. And the White Sox won't have him start full-time either, by the way. But really quick, you brought up the point about McCann maybe should have been brought up earlier because of Avila's struggles and injuries. But McCann, I think you would have stunted his growth. You don't want to do that either. They kept him in the farm system. Let him grow there. I think he has. And now he gets to play at the major league level going into his second season. And this will be his first as the full-time starting catcher, which obviously we know he deserves at this point. And I think he's a lot better potentially than Avila and Brian Holiday, who is the backup now.
What I want
Tigers.
you to do is go back and look at the 2014 season, what McCann was doing in the minors. You could argue that if McCann was in there in that series versus Baltimore over Avila, then you could have a situation where the Tigers would have been effective. He was doing some damage in the minor leagues while Avila was up here. So I think that was maybe a tactical error. It's a managerial decision, and I agree, because when he came up in 2014, he did okay. He showed some flashes. And then last year in 2015, he emerged as a guy that was a leader. He kind of stepped in and was that voice when, he and Iglesias got into that fight, and he kind of demanded excellence, and he's kind of getting that reputation. It's taking shape as the next leader, the guy that's going to stand up, because Victor Martinez, Miguel Cabrera, they're all silent guys. They're all guys that kind of, do their thing and don't want to kind of mix it in with the media.
Well, Vimar, you know what, will be vocal when he has to, though. Vimar has spoken up. He's an ultra-serious competitor, Vimar, too. Miggy has his fun, but Frankie Rodriguez, he has some fun on the mound when he strikes out somebody and gets a save. He'll celebrate them, but he's an ultra-serious competitor as well. So they're bringing in some very ultra-serious guys. I mean, Jordan Zimmermann is another one of that type, of that mold, that is ultra-serious about his craft. So you got K-Rod now being brought in, who's like that. Already Vimar on the roster. Zimmermann being brought in, who's like that. And McCann emerging onto the scene, who is that type as well, can be a good clubhouse leader for the Tigers. And really was that as a rookie last year with the Tigers, too.
Do you think that Alex Avila is going to have an injury-plagued season with the White Sox? I mean, he's really, there were so many situations where there were foul balls tipped off his mask, and he used that old-time mask. Now everyone's looking at this whole concussion thing, and everyone's kind of like, Alex should switch to the new helmet. He did last year. He kind of had a little bit better season, but the problem was he couldn't stay on the field, and he didn't want to be a backup, which I think he should embrace. He'll probably end.
He's going to be a backup in Chicago, too, by the way.
I think he's going to split time. I think he's going to get a chance. I think he was told that he's going to get a chance to split time.
Maybe
or
get a
earn
chance.
It.
Yeah, to start the season, he might get a chance to actually earn some starting playing time. But I don't think it'll last. But your point was about the nagging injuries, right? Pretty much. Well, and that's the concern now. What did he really go through? What was the extent of those concussions? How many of them were maybe covered up, too? Which now they can't do. You see it now in professional football. It's serious. Once you get a concussion, you're out of the game, and you should be out of there for 7 days, as baseball does it now, the 7-day concussion list. So Avila, going forward, that has to be a concern for him to think about. You have to factor that in as a player, thinking, how about my long-term future after baseball? Is it worth it for Avila to keep playing if he suffers more and more concussions? I say forget it, Alex. I don't think it's worth it, man. I think for a guy like that.
The White Sox did get a guy with a lot of knowledge in the division, a guy that can be a little bit more of a mentor on the bench, and a guy that can help the young catchers there and the pitchers. Because remember,
young pitching staff in Chicago.
He's been through the battles with KC, with all the other teams in the division, with Cleveland, with Minnesota. He can give great scouting reports. And the White Sox definitely had a really disappointing season. They did not even come close to reaching the expectation that they started the 2015 season with. So I like the addition for them. I do think that he'll probably end up being the backup, not playing full time. But what he'll add to that team in terms of experience and knowledge and being a clubhouse leader, it's going to be invaluable. Yeah, for $2.5 million, it's not a bad price.
You pay that for him.
Oh yeah.
He's a good addition, Doc. You're right for the White Sox, but he's not a loss for the Tigers. Sad but true at this point. He wasn't a loss. So we're not going to cry too much today on the podcast about Avila moving to the south side.
Do you think he homers off Tigers pitching next season?
Hey, you never know in baseball, man. One time they play each other 18 times a year. He'll hit one home run, maybe.
Okay,
But I'm going to say this right now. The Tigers took a year off, where the White Sox have been bad for a while, and they disappointed last year, had major expectations. The Tigers, realistically, for me, were not going to win the division last year. They were a third-place team, in my opinion. So they only underachieved by a little bit, not by a ton of it. So where the White Sox did. So with that all being said, the Tigers took a year off. They'll be back next year. And what has signified that to me is the signing of Jordan Zimmermann for all that money.
Okay.
That's my opinion. They'll be back in 2016 and contending for the division title. Maybe not winning it.
I know you're fascinated with the Jabba Chamberlain watch. He signed a deal with
where?
The Indians.
Good for him. Another AL Central team. He can't go away from us, huh? We still have to see him.
Yeah, and I don't know if he we'll have to look it up, but I wonder if he earned a ring with KC. If he got that.
The ring that he didn't deserve, but he was on the team.
He's on the team, so the best part was, though, with the news with the Tigers is they brought back McClendon, and already people are starting to talk like, okay, he's the backup guy.
He's the interim manager in waiting. I called it on last week's podcast, too.
But let me tell you, Alex Avila came out today in the paper and said,
yeah.
What did I say, Alex?
Yeah.
Okay.
But, hey, I know what you mean. Yeah. You did it.
Avila came out and said McClendon as backup plan for Ausmus is ludicrous.
Well, he's going to say that, Doc. Come on, man. He can't admit too much to the media. We just had that conversation.
He's got to be like, you know what? Yeah, you know what? I want to be real. Just be like, you know what? We expect our managers to perform well, and if he doesn't, we always have the best guys. And you don't say McClendon. That. You could say we always believe in our management, and we believe that if something were to happen to Brad, we fully believe that the next man up would handle his business.
But then we know what he means. It's McClendon that he's talking about then. But you know what? I've heard from Anthony Fennick and other guys covering the Tigers every day that, guess what? Al Avila is much more transparent with the media than Dave Dombrowski ever was as the GM and the club president. So that's a good thing to have. Having that guy to go talk to, he'll give you more details, more info. And that's a good thing, big time.
Mario Pemba chatted with us on the network one-on-one. He said the same thing. He said that Dave was just an ultra-serious, true professional. And, you know, when you got guys and you're around the clubhouse, it's kind of jovial sometimes, and you crack jokes or you try to, you know, kind of keep it lighthearted. But Mario Pemba told us that Dave was really serious and didn't...
Straight laced, big time, where Al Avila might give you some more, and it seems like he will give you more to work with. But even him, what you just brought up about Lloyd McClendon, he can't reveal that he's the interim manager in waiting. That would be ludicrous to say, because it would sound like, hey, well, we're going to fire Brad Ausmus eventually then, right? He can't say that to his manager.
No, he can't.
So
no, he can't.
That keeps a level playing field for everybody in the organization without saying that one person is greater than the other, or is that guy that, hey, if one guy's fired, such as Ausmus, which is who we're talking about here specifically, if he's fired, then we got a guy in waiting. They don't want to reveal that that's the reason why they hired McClendon. They're going to say everything else to get all of us away from that concept of the fact that he was hired, more than likely because of that fact that he is now the manager in waiting in AAA.
Yeah, you got some tweets from me earlier this week, the GM Doc. I kind of now have been thinking, okay, if I was a general manager, what kind of attitude would I take? Would I be laid back? Would I be fiery? I kind of feel like I'd be George Steinbrenner, just keep people on their toes.
You'd be in the middle, though, because you can be laid back, but I can see you also giving your opinion more often than a guy like, and Mike Ilitch does. He's never around, but he is older, remember, too. Let's give him that as well.
I want to be George Steinbrenner of the podcast. Just kind of keep you on your toes, let you know that you're on a two more podcast contract, and I know you want to bring in agents to negotiate with me, but
I might bring in somebody. Watch out, Doc.
You got to step it up. You got to get more numbers, brother.
Can always do that, and maybe have an agent now backing me up, but maybe in the long-term future for Vito Chirco. And for Doc, you deserve somebody like that. What you're doing with the podcast network right now, doing some big things and having more Meisner on. I mean, a guy like that talking about the Mike Valenti situation at the ticket. That was huge.
That was good stuff, right?
It was big stuff for the podcast network.
It was good stuff. I enjoyed doing it. And no, I'm just messing with you. You got a job here. You can do whatever you want.
I'm glad you were joking around.
I was joking around.
No, I know you were. No problem. And with that, I think we'll wrap up today's edition of the podcast. For Doc, John Macron, always a pleasure talking with you. I am Vito Chirco signing off for the 18th episode of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. We'll be back next week for another fresh edition of the podcast.